All right, here we go. Welcome, Sam, to the Real Talk.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Rob. I am going to have so much fun today.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I've been catching you caught you on LinkedIn, of course, the Bagilla B2B world. I caught a lot of your lives, your stuff you're doing with your WBS podcast, WBS Rocks, right? And then you got your
WBS
ElevatIQ
Rocks.
consultancy through your ERP side, talking about ERP and digitalization. So fascinating, and especially all the people you bring on, and all the professionals and the thought leaders, and all the people in different businesses. I was very fascinated. I'm very glad you've reached out, and we can create some fun, dynamic content together.
Yeah, super blessed to have attention of those guests. To be honest, they are really insightful, one of the best, to be honest. And they come to our show, they share their insights. Sometimes that is going to be fun. Sometimes it is going to be super serious, but that is equally fun for me, in my opinion.
Well, of course. And as I said, you moderate very well, very articulate. Of course, you bring the energy, the life between it. And because some of the conversations that we all have into software digitalizations, ERP, it's not so as sexy as you would say sometimes, so fascinating, but you really break it down, make it more exciting through the architecture, breaking down. So it's very fun. And I'm glad to have you on and really talk a little bit about you and get into the depth of really ElevatIQ and yourself and WBS Rocks and what you're doing and what your mission is out in the world today. So first, start with, who is Sam Gupta?
Okay, so I'll keep it super brief because I've been around the block for roughly 20 years, and it could go a little longer.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a very manufacturing and distribution centric environment. That's what my family was like. And then, went for engineering, and surprisingly enough, that was actually electronics engineering. So I know a little bit about your business, through my degree, but I never practiced anything professionally in the electronics or the electrical world. I went for Fortune 500 consulting, and there my role was really to fix a lot of crazy situations. As you know, I mean, you always talk about that software is sexy, but if you actually come to our world, ERP is not meant to be sexy. I don't think anybody calls ERP sexy, but I'll take it, man. I'll take it any day. If you
Oh yeah, at the end of the day is, it's not a sex, just make it fun and exciting and dynamic for the world to say, what is it? And because it does the year, I mean, we get all into that, but a little bit about, okay, so let's talk about your background. So where were you born? How'd you get to States, or we've been born and raised in the States, or what's going on in that end?
So born and raised in India, came early on in the States. I spent a lot of time traveling all over the map. I would have lived in 10 states right now in the US, camped everywhere in any of the Fortune 500 facility that you can probably name. Just because I was having fun, I was brought into the majority of the engagements where they had a lot of problems with the enterprise architecture or the ERP system. So my role was to really analyze, fix, do something, because as you know, ERP implementations are not supposed to be fun.
That's what I want to break down a little bit. Some questions I have, it's like, the consultancy, because the consultancy is a very generic word and term used, especially going into, let's use consultancy in the side of what you do in ERP and software implementation through manufacturing distribution. So really, what does that entail? Embody a quick synopsis of what does that entail, what you do when you go into companies.
So from our perspective, I think our scope is going to be slightly broader because we get into a lot of selection engagement. It's going to be if you are able to get the value from your existing systems or the ERP. So typically we take very different perspective of the architecture. And the way I like to compare the architecture, it's going to be almost like building your house or building a bridge, right? I mean, you need to find out all of the components and how they are going to be interacting with each other. So our role typically is, if there is a broken implementation, we are brought in, and our role is to align these components and figure out, okay, where has the overwork been done? So if I were to define the consulting word in our experience, it's going to be, you pretty much need to know everything about the company. When we walk into the manufacturing to distribution facility, we need to know a lot about the company. And the way we are able to maintain this knowledge is just because we go to a lot of different facilities. So that's why we are able to bring the best practices to the table. But when you think about the consultants, especially when you talk about the ERP consultants, I think they work on the financial systems. They provide the financial insight, but it's going to be everything about the company as far as the business systems goes.
Yeah, I mean, to simplify it, you come into of course, like, the six to create, understand architecture, infrastructure between all the departments and verticals that are involved, and look at how to cut waste, improve efficiencies, implement digitalizations, implement ERP systems, and then how to maximize really their efficiencies with ROIs, correct?
Yes. So our involvement is not really going to be purely from the business optimization perspective. There are some consultants who typically focus only on the business. For us, it has to be some sort of digital aspect. It has to have some sort of ERP aspect to the problem. If they feel that the problem is going to be related to ERP or software, or making them slightly more digital than they might be, then we get into and we help there. But if it is going to be pure play business problem, then we are probably not the right fit.
Yeah. So going into this ERP side, enterprise resource planning, can you define that for me?
Yeah, so happy to. ERP stands, obviously, you have already spelled that out. It's the enterprise resource planning. And each of those keywords are going to be equally important for an organization. So number one is enterprise. So the majority of the companies that you are going to see, especially in the SMB market, the way they grew, from your startup phase to a decent sized company and then to corporation, the majority of them have very siloed structure, the way their budgets are created, the way their functioning is done overall from the department perspective. So they don't necessarily have this enterprise perspective, which I like to define it as more of the integrated view of the organization, which is going to be slightly more cross-functional nature of the organization. So what ERP does is basically it ties all the parts of your organization together. Now, the second keyword in the ERP is going to be resources. So what kind of resources are we talking about? It could be anything that a manufacturing company produces. That's going to be your products. It could be your assets, fixtures, tools. It could be manpower as well, but we don't necessarily do the human resources planning inside the ERP because that is not the real financial function of the organization. So if you require, let's say, if your HR people need a software, they probably would go for something like HCM or HR software. But if it is going to be anything related to finance, that has to sit inside your ERP system. So resources, anything and everything that goes inside your product or to help create those products. Okay. So and the last part is really the planning. Okay. And the planning of resources. So the majority of the planning is going to be really from the supply chain perspective. It's going to be from the operations perspective. Obviously, a little bit of financial planning is going to be involved. But again, this is the system that is actually tying all of these departments together. So if you need centralized insight in terms of your sales territory planning, it could be your product planning, it could be product innovation planning, it could be your supply chain planning, it could be operations planning, it could be shop floor optimization. All of that sits right inside ERP. And that's why the way I like to think about ERP, it's almost like your financial glue of the organization. Okay, so this is the financial glue that actually connects all of the pieces and provides the financial insight wherever you need inside the organization. I can go on, but I think
I know you can go on, but it's simple. But I love your energy and excitement, enthusiasm for it. It's contagious. It's like it makes it exciting, and that's what you want to bring to the table, especially in your position in ElevatIQ. And ElevatIQ is, I want to understand, is that most of that encompasses that process. What you just explained is what you guys encompass with the consultancy, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
ElevatIQ focuses on the selection of the ERP systems, optimization of the existing systems that you might have inside the organization. If, let's say, if you are not getting enough business value from your existing systems, then we can help with that. We can help bring all of these pieces together. If you require help, we can help select a technology, because the procurement itself could be very complex overall from the contracting perspective, understanding how these systems are going to work together and how they are going to create the ideal balance sheet that you are hoping to get from your company.
You're
So
right.
we help with all.
All about the bottom line at the end of the day. We all look at what we're going to make. But so what are the, going into scale? You've gone on to say you worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. You've seen a lot of things at large scale, and then you work at mid-size to smaller scale. Where is your sweet spot right now? The companies that you're focusing on working and enhancing their systems?
So our sweet spot is anywhere from, let's say, 10 to 20 million dollar to roughly 250 to 500 million dollar. Those are the companies where we add the most value, just because they are going to have these decentralized departments. The other companies are in need as well, but they don't struggle as much. They already have their, even if they are going to have, let's say, the legacy systems, they are going to have some sort of centralized insight. So our
Right.
sweet spot is really 10 million to roughly 250 to 500 million dollars.
So when someone comes to you, I mean, especially start with big things, e-commerce or companies in distribution in general, which is a commerce sell, buy, and sell. So through the distribution side, what do you see as a startup company or company growing to a scale? What are the biggest challenges you go into companies? Do they use? Because I know there's a lot of other softwares people use to bring up. It goes into some QuickBooks and using accounting and using inventory management. And what are the, as I say, what are the things that you see, and then what are areas, the pain points that constantly keep happening with companies that are growing, and you feel like, oh, they don't spend time on the infrastructure. They're just more focused about the sale and forget about how to actually build that infrastructure to scale it.
Yeah, so from our experience, to be honest,
Yeah.
understanding of the ERP systems and how they can add the business value to your organization is always going to be the biggest misconception. For example, let's say if I call anybody and if I tell them, hey, I am going to help you with your ERP system. If I mention this, then they are not going to be talking to me,
Yeah.
because for them, the ERP system is going to be just the QuickBooks or some sort of accounting system.
Yes.
It just sits, somewhere in the corner. But if you implement the ERP system correctly, then it can allow you to enable all of those challenges that you have been facing from the business perspective. And that is going to be the centralized allocation of the inventory, the allocation of the inventory to your key customers, making sure you are able to provide the fulfillment time that your customers are expecting, or maybe beat your competitors in the fulfillment time. Because if you are the distribution business, your core competitive advantage, in my opinion, is obviously going to be the subject matter expertise of the product. But the second competitive advantage that you have is going to be really the operational efficiency and the customer service. And when we talk about the operational efficiency and the customer service, when we look at these smaller companies, they typically, if they have very siloed system, they are not going to be able to accomplish the sophisticated scenarios when it comes to, let's say, the centralized loyalty, the centralized agreements. When we talk about the centralized customer service, when you are, let's say, buying from one specific store, if you are a distributor and then you walk into the next store, then you get treated as a new customer, and then it's just not going to be centralized. So the biggest challenge that we see in the distribution space overall, from our perspective, is going to be that centralized operations, the centralized insight, the centralized inventory, the centralized organization is what they are challenged with, and they are not able to grow because they have a lot of manual interventions in the process, and because of that, they just cannot grow.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate. With this, some of the processes that we have, we use a ERP system. We have it centralizes everything for us through our accounting, inventory management, gives us insights, gives us financial, gives us things for our customers. We can build in our KPIs built into it, our days late, our quality procedures through our ISO of how the tolerances of incoming to outgoing. We can measure all these. But it's fascinating. I mean, I'm just being honest. Is years ago we just had the system just to do process order. We didn't use all those metrics because maybe they told us, but we didn't know. We were just doing still the kind of day-to-day business, getting the parts, and then forgetting that there's another whole module that can give us insights to be able to quantify those results if we just looked at the numbers. And I feel like that happens to a lot of companies too. They buy the software. Of course, they implement it, but they still get data of the sales, and the management and the side don't still focus. They're busy. Everybody's busy, and they don't get into those breaking down those tiers. So is that somewhere you come into? It's like, okay, you have the system, but let's break it down to what it can quantify for you.
Yeah, so metrics is definitely going to be a great factor. In fact, I'm actually going to tell you a story of a person who actually grew a company, the manufacturing and distribution company, to roughly $150 million. And when they were growing from $10 million to $50 to $150 million, one of the things that they were faced with is going to be the number of decisions that they have to make on a daily basis. It grew by 50x. Okay, so now these guys were not having good time overall in the company. And just to touch on the KPIs, right? So from the KPI perspective, this guy, what they did is, if any time the conversation was happening inside the company, if any conversation, any discussion, if the meeting is going longer than, let's say, half an hour, there is an improvement that can be done in that specific department. Okay, we should probably have the KPI. So let's say what this guy did is, he wanted to ask everyone, if a meeting goes longer than 30 minutes, then what you should be doing is why you are not able to find these answers in your centralized ERP system or the process that you have. And if you are not able to find that, what can we do to find those? So they used the amount of conversation, the amount of discussion that you are having inside the company as an opportunity to be able to improve the process, to be able to create these KPIs. So if you are going to be that stickler in terms of creating the APIs, that's where your accountability is going to be. Then let's say if you ask me, Rob, let's say if I'm working for you, and if you tell me that, hey, you didn't meet your number, and then I'm actually going to show you in my ERP, this is what I did, from day one. So then, it's very hard to challenge the insight and the numbers and the KPIs that we are going to have inside the ERP system.
Yeah, let me turn that another way, because if you go to a sales app, we inventory inside, but let's go in the sales app. So I want to flip the switch a little bit. As a sales, I can be, say, as a top salesperson that comes in and KPIs built into the CRM system, because data doesn't lie. Of course, data doesn't lie, right?
Yeah.
But also the KPIs come into play. I think there's the points of the sales, financials, and company interests, and all the things that come into play with build a balanced scorecard, that whole process. Yeah. And how are we going to improve it? So I hit all my numbers, but at the end of the day I'm not the greatest person to work with. So these all come to place, these are things that happen, right? Yep. And I'm just giving you real life instances. So this happens that they might be performing, or the company is performing. The data, the manager shows I'm doing all this, but the manager is not the best to work with. So there are data points, but at the end of the day, 80% is data-based. 20% could be more subjective. In my opinion, there is some subjective decision-making through human resource management side than there is the data. Because at the end of the day, we are sales, everybody's sales-based. They want to move sales, generate revenue. But those systems come into place. It's kind of, and that's what we use. We use all KPIs and data. And sometimes my manager's like, well, they're not great to work with. I'm like, well, the data shows that they're fantastic, but they're not fun to work with. I'm like, well, there's a plus and a minus. So how do we, have you gotten into those instances with companies that they have that situation where the data is telling the story, but then the human resource is the problem?
So I am actually going to tell you one more story related to this. And I have actually worked in many different sales organizations, right? And you are always going to have that disparity that, one person is outstanding, the other person is not performing. So how do we balance this, right, as an executive? So if I go to a lot of these organizations, they don't necessarily understand what is working for the people. Those are bringing the real revenue to the table, to be honest. They don't have that insight. If you had that insight, okay, maybe they have the best performing territory, and that could be the reason why they are actually bringing the revenue. They might not be the best salesperson. There are so many different factors that actually go in determining, what is working for the sales. So unless you have that kind of insight, unless you understand your territory and the products at a deeper level, unless you understand what exactly are they trying to do, if they say that, they are difficult to work with, why are they difficult to work with? What is happening? Are they really too good? If they are really too good and you are not as good, then yeah, sometimes there's going to be that argument as well. But I mean, as executive, we really want the best performers in the company. But what is more important is we need to know if they are a real performer or they are doing something, or they may have got lucky, and because of that they might be bringing the numbers. So again, if you have that centralized insight and clear understanding of the information, of the data, and all of your systems connected, then only you are going to have that kind of insight. And if a smart person goes in and they can figure these things out, from the system and
yeah,
tell you what's happening.
You hit the nail on the head, because it comes to my territory. We might have one of the biggest customers, but all the eggs are in one basket. That customer, they can live and die from one customer. That's what I say. Is you have to keep hunting to spread that basket to have those, because it's not Christmas all the time. Christmas ends. There's a seasonal side of this. That's how I can tell especially in the day today, supply chain is out of control. There's shortage, but its business is increased, and it is Christmas time because of that. But there's much more challenges and much more things to overcome, and that's why I wanted to jump into a little bit between the ERP systems that you work with, and what are the systems that you're very familiar and you work with in ElevatIQ?
So we really like to be product agnostic, to be honest. We don't like to couple ourselves with any specific vendor or the product. Our goal and role always with the customers is going to be whether they are getting the cleaner enterprise architecture, and every system, every vendor, they are designed for a specific purpose. If you try to oversell it, if you try to over engineer it, that's where the problem is going to be. And just because you cannot see a specific software, sometimes it's just harder to find whether they are really designed for a specific purpose. So we really like to be product agnostic. And Rob, I'm not going to name anybody there. Okay, everybody is super awesome, to be honest. Every system is super awesome, but everything has a place in this world. All of those systems.
Very politically correct answer. I love that. I mean, because we don't have to talk about them, but then, everybody knows the big guys, the Oracles and SAPs and all and Microsoft Dynamics and all the guys getting into that. And yeah, they're all strengths, and they all have strengths. They all have ways to build, and they can build architecture, and they work on that aspect. And that's one thing I want to get into is, have you been involved with ERPs to be able to integrate with CRM systems? Or have you ever found, or you don't have to tell the name, but systems that actually have a very robust CRM system and an ERP system into one?
Yeah, so I have seen both of the cases, and typically the majority of the engagements that we are going to have, there are going to be at least 5 to 10 different systems. So even though they might be calling that, I have just SAP, but underneath they might be utilizing 5 to 10 different systems. Yeah, okay. So I will tell you that the CRM plus ERP combination is very common. Okay, the CRM component inside ERP is designed for a specific purpose, for a specific stage of a company. For example, let's say if you could do everything just in one system, because the overall premise of an ERP is you want to do everything in one system, because we are trying to decouple these siloed departments and trying to bring them together. But when you do that, there is a little bit of rigidity that you need to push that, okay, you know what, this is my ERP system, and from tomorrow onwards, everybody uses it, or the people who are not going to use, okay, you guys are out from here. Okay, so that is one approach that you could take, but that's not the approach that is going to fly with people, right? So we need to get buy-in from the people. So now, if you are a very small company, okay, you don't need to be integrated completely, because you are going to have, let's say, 10 people. If you are 10 people, everybody's sort of owning their own functions and department, and they could probably live in the tool that they really like. So we see 3 different scenarios at 3 different stages of a company. When the companies start very small, at that point of time, they are all going to use very siloed systems, because they don't necessarily have the need for the integration. Even if the manual effort is going to be across the systems, the manual effort is going to be very minimal. it does not really, it's not necessarily a sort of the bottleneck for your growth. So let's say if you're a $10 million company, you are probably going to have QuickBooks, you are probably going to have Salesforce. I'll do the name drop right now. Okay. So you are happy. Okay. But, once you actually cross that 20, 30, 40, $50 million point, that's when you are going to have these growing pains. Okay, the admin effort is going to be 4x, 5x, 6x, because you need to keep adding people. And then what is going to happen is your revenue is going to grow, but your bottom line is going to shrink. Okay, that's what happens with growth, and that's not good for a CFO. Okay, what they want is, if the revenue is growing, I want to grow faster my bottom line. So that's where the ERP system comes in. Now, when we talk about the CRM and the ERP integration, ERP is designed to do some of the CRM processes, but it is not designed to do everything. So for example, I mentioned to you in the beginning that ERP is supposed to be financial glue. If your sales process is not necessarily touching the dollar, for example, let's say if you are doing marketing automation, see, you as the executive, Rob, you don't necessarily care what is happening in the marketing world. You are going to tell them, you know what, once you have the sales order, once you have the customer who's willing to sign, just let me know. Otherwise, just keep trying, guys. And so that's where the boundary of the ERP comes. So let's say if we are looking at purely marketing automation, that doesn't need to be set in the ERP. That doesn't need to be integrated. Integration is probably going to be an overkill overall if you actually try to do that. So sometimes we see scenarios in which, let's say if you're going to see HubSpot, which is designed for marketing automation, you are going to see Pardot, which is designed for marketing automation. Now, if you look at your industrial distributors, they don't necessarily go after the marketing automation or the newer marketing methods, right? Because they are going to trade show, they are going to have order form, put it in the ERP system, fulfill, send it to the customer. We are good. The world is good. But let's say if you're looking at newer companies.
Let me stop right there. Times have changed. So let's look at what's happening, because 2 years ago, that kind of story was it, but today it's changed. So why don't you kind of switch it up and explain what's happening today and where the pandemic has pushed us for that?
Yeah, so as you know, with pandemic, we don't necessarily have the trade show. So you have to find out those channels, okay, where you are going to find those customers. And one of the ways, Rob, as you are doing this show, this is one of the examples of marketing, right? So you are actually building the content. I am building my content. And this is how everybody should be building the content. Even in the industrial spaces or the companies, they are not really into the newer methods of marketing where they are going to do the content marketing. They are going to build really awesome content related to their product or process or brand, and then they are actually going to drive the traffic. If you do all of that, you are definitely going to require some sort of specialized CRM. Otherwise, your ERP system is not going to be sufficient to be able to do that. But you need to figure out what is going to be your integration strategy. What is going to be your source of truth? So once you actually get the sales order, then who takes care of the process? That's where your ERP becomes the boss. Okay. If ERP does not become the boss, then you have to do the data sync between your CRM and ERP. And Rob, if you have done any sort of data integration, you know how much pain point is there. The amount of effort.
My head always blows every time I try to do something like that. Yeah. So, but no, we know through that process. I mean, I can even explain that we are infrastructure that we've done. We've had a great, very robust ERP system over the past years, and we've been trying to integrate. And we have integrated, but it goes to the digitalization as technology evolves, as integrations come, because it used to be EDI. Now there's APIs.
Yeah.
Now there's calling functions. So this digitalization revolution of what's going on in the world, and that everything's gotten more simpler. Everybody builds surfaces, builds a platform that you can build modular based to be able to talk and call. And these systems, just like it's for the marketing and the ERP and CRM, they have to build databases that you can integrate like that, because you're right, as a distribution or a sales driven company, you need to prospect and have continuous marketing effects, especially just like with geographical. You have to measure the geographical. That information comes from ERP. Yep. Where am I selling the most?
Yeah.
What product am I selling the most? What is selling the most? That information. And then that can actually it can connect to a CRM system that you can build campaigns out
Yeah.
because it's feeding that data and that integration. I think that's one of the biggest strategies, I think, as a growing company or a small company to big, is to grow to get that. Because a lot of people say, oh, if it works, don't fix it, because I'm successful without it. I don't want to understand it because it's very complicated, because we have to hire people like yourself to come explain it to everybody what it is, how it works. And like, well, he just went over my head 10,000 feet, right? So it's just like, I don't
That's
even know
how it goes.
that's how it goes, because we are the owners, leaders of the companies, the executives, and we are not very digital savvy. Well, myself, I can't put myself in that, but a lot of others aren't. They've been very successful, 10 times the size, like 100, 500 million companies. They've been very successful without all this digitalization. But now through the pandemic, you can see just to grow and to be, there's a lot of new startups and companies coming in, taking that market share quickly because they figured out systems that can do that job, and AI based. They think for you.
Yeah.
And they can give you assumptions. So really, where do you see that? Bringing my question, where do you see that integration between ERP and CRM system for the future, with now the new technology and AI based features that are coming to the market?
So honestly speaking, it's not going to be a question of integration between your CRM and ERP. It's going to be a question between all of the channels that you are going to have. Yeah. And as we grow, as we evolve, we are going to see a lot more channels. For example, let's say if you look at a traditional distribution organization, you just had a bunch of stores. Maybe you were selling through your wholesalers or the contractors. You didn't have to worry about any other channels. But right now, Rob, if you look at the way the things have changed in last 3 or 2 years or 5 years, then you would notice as Amazon is becoming really big, the marketplaces, all of these big corporations. Let's say if you want to work with Bank of America or Chase, they are going to have some sort of punch out system, because they are actually trying to automate their process. Then you are going to have an e-commerce portal. If you don't have e-commerce, if you're not really driving your customers through e-commerce, then you are sort of behind, because everybody else is trying to control your business, and you don't necessarily have that IP or the control on your customers, right? So your goal should be to drive as many customers as you can on your e-commerce channel. So going back to your comment about CRP to ERP integration, it's not going to be just that. It's going to be your ERP is going to be your central hub, and then you are going to have a CRM. You are going to have an e-commerce. If you have physical stores, then you are going to have POS. If you have punch-out systems, then you are going to have B2B integration there. EDI is not going anywhere. You are going to have EDI, because that is designed for business communication. Then you are going to have API. So it's almost like this hub architecture that you have for a distribution organization. And you need to create an architecture that is going to help you integrate easily. Because tomorrow, Rob, let's say if you have your top salesperson, and he has been selling to, let's say, 4 accounts, and this guy gets you the 5th account. One of the questions that they are going to have is how scalable your infrastructure is. Can you accept my orders digitally? The second question they are going to have is, hey, you know what? I have 2 options for you in terms of enabling this digitally. That is going to be either you can call our APIs, or maybe 3 options. Or you can do the communication using EDI, or you can call our punch-out system. And if you're not able to do that, then you are not part of the deal. I am actually going to be working with your competitor, because they are digitally far more capable.
Like you said, it's like also now comes the customer experience.
Yeah,
that customer experience in this digital age is more and more important. And how I want to break that down, of how you said that, is you build a platform. So your ERP is basic platform. You build a platform. Like myself, my philosophy is building a platform where we're going to have these verticals, and they're all talking to each other. It could be just not the CRM system. It could be the e-commerce side. It could be digitalization, the API. It could be a marketplace. There could be a lot of different platforms. But at the end of the day, the base is the ERP, because that's where all the processes happen. But there are a lot of things built on top of that, that can bring in from the sales marketing aspect to inventory check to order processing to whatever. And that's how you said there used to be siloed into one, but now we're the verticals, it's just broken into a horizontal. It's everything is just into like a flower. It's opening, and this digitalization, it's so exciting, but sometimes it's like, where do I start? What do I do?
Exactly.
How do I do this? How does everything work together? How can I communicate everything together? But fortunately, a lot of companies, leading companies, are already extending API integrations to some things and to pull that information. And that really, in my opinion, is choosing an ERP. Probably there's the same thing I'm talking for you. Choosing ERP, that should be an ERP that's very forward thinking and has integrations that you can partner up with other companies to bring in solutions, because that ERP company is not going to have everything you want. They're going to be a platform. But you want to have that platform as robust that it can integrate with different processes to build your infrastructure for sales, marketing, for HR, for whatever you're going to get into, actually, all the CRM side. So, I mean, what's your thoughts? Is that how you think that scope and the simple scope is the best strategy for anybody to build something that's forward thinking?
Yeah. So one of the comment that I would have on top of that is going to be, people like to think that, ERP is solution to all of my problems. ERP is never going to be solution to all of your problems. It's going to be your organization. So you need to build an architecture. And that's why I like to emphasize on the word called architecture, that figure out what are going to be the components that you are going to require in your architecture. What is going to be interaction of all of those components? Who is going to have the source of authority for each of the data sets, and how the communication is going to be done end to end so that you can meet your business goals. It's not the conversation about, hey, I need to get the most forward thinking ERP. Even if you get that, you will not be able to meet your business goals, because your business problems are far bigger than just an ERP. Okay, that's where you need to map all of that out. The way you would create your organization, you would create a site, you would create a warehouse, you would create, identify people who are going to be in each of the places, and that's how systems work. They are not any different.
They just know the ERP systems help you facilitate data, and the data you put in is garbage in, is garbage out. You can have the best ERP system in the world, or best system, but if that information is garbage going in there, it's going to give you the same result out. And that's one thing, is the system. Just, you did hit the nail on the head. The system is not going to fix your story. The system's not going to fix anything. It's the people. It's the information. It's the data they collect and what is important to them to put in there, and the system to calculate and do basic arithmetic. It is mathematics to be able to solve some of those, quantify some of those questions, because it can think much faster than a human these days, because they'll solve problems for us and give us make better calculated decisions for moving forward. So that's really, I mean, that's, you hit the nail on the head. It's fascinating. I love talking and breaking that down. You're just opening my mind, opening my mind to a lot of things. It's like, and I mean, I will just share, like, we have team members globally. Some people's like, oh, we just need to get this system and it'll fix everything. I'm like, okay, here's the system. Learn how to drive it now. Like, oh, I thought it drives itself. No, you have to actually put something into it. You have to fuel it for it to drive. And that's what happens. I think the B2C, because we're all in B2B industry, the B2C, the customer experience on B2C is made, it's so seamless for the consumer to acquire and purchase and get their journey. That it's because the B has created this. But again, those Bs have collected data, they've done lots of data to be able to give that experience. But then when you come into the B2B, it's like, oh, I have a system, it should do it. Huh? But it doesn't think for you. You have to actually tell it what to do. So do you experience that sometimes? Like, oh, the system's not going to, you have to actually explain that to a lot of your clients?
Yeah. So obviously, one of the things that you are going to get in the ERP community is ERP systems are extremely, extremely hard to use. Yes. Okay. And the reason they are hard to use is because, I don't know, Rob, where you grew up. As I mentioned, I grew up in India, right? Yes. So one of the things one of the differences that you are going to notice in the developing countries and the developed countries is, if you are driving for the first time, the driving is going to be extremely easy in developing country, because you don't have to know the rules. You can kill people. Nobody's going to question you. Right? But once you actually come to the developed world, you have to go through all of these rules. You have to understand. You have to appreciate. You have to embrace. You have to learn why they matter. And that's a real difference between a flexible system and an ERP system. Because ERP system has millions and millions and millions of rules. And the reason why they have rules is to prevent what you just mentioned, which is garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have any rules, everybody's just free. They can enter whatever they want. If you do that.
What a great metaphor. You just nailed that. You nailed that again. It's another drop bomb that red. The great metaphor. And I love that analogy, because you simplify it. when you understand the systems and software, you know what, I simplify it to the simple human. And hey, I call myself simple human. I'm a simple human. I'm continuously learning. I have intellectual curiosity, but from my side is I'm a simple human. And sometimes we all leaders and companies are simple humans because they don't understand the technology and the digitalization, and that's the things like they're very successful in the product they were selling, the manufacturing engineering, but never took it to that digitalization for sales side. So now taking it to a step, a question I have for you is, as I have to ask all of my guests is, how has the pandemic impacted your business? And really where were you going when you start from when it started to and where are you now? And how off did it throw you? And did you kind of have to rescale exactly your tactics?
Honestly speaking, Rob, when we were in the mid of pandemic, we were not expecting all of this, to be honest. Nobody did, right? And we were not isolated from it either. Initially, we were thinking that, we have seen a lot of recessions. I have seen 2 of them, and I was like, okay, I've lived through recession. Okay, I've managed it. I'm gonna get through it. Okay, but this recession was unique. Okay, in this particular case, IT systems, when you look at the IT systems or ERP systems, the transformations, they are going to be always the last priority for the companies, right? So for us as a business, obviously we didn't get any net new leads. Okay. But then what happened is we also started getting our existing contracts killed. Okay, so before the pandemic, we didn't have to worry about any of the sales because everybody sort of knew Sam Gupta. They could reach out to Sam Gupta when they have a problem. But now you have the pandemic and you don't have any sales and marketing. We didn't create the kind of IP that today's companies really create, to be honest. Okay, so we were operating just like an industrial distributor. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm just going to go to trade show. I'm going to shake a bunch of hands and I'm going to get enough business that is going to be enough for us. But come pandemic, we had to change our game. Okay, we really had to believe in the newer methods of marketing, and that was the birth of WBS Rocks, to be honest. Okay, that's when we started creating all of this content. It has been a journey overall from the content perspective, to be honest. When we started our blog, we were not posting anything before that, to be honest. You can look at the date on the site. There was just one blog before pandemic. Okay, after that we were like, okay, how do we find business now? So we started creating all of this content. Then we had to figure out, okay, now we are creating, nobody's reading it. What do we do? So how do we distribute? So then we had to figure out the social media strategy. Then we have to figure out all of this, how do we sort of distribute it in different channels? So we learned that. Then we figured out, what? Our competitors were actually trying the podcast, because that is one of the easiest ways to build the relationship in the community, to build the thought leadership, to be able to build the content and to drive the traffic. And that actually changed my life. I cannot tell you how much. Okay, overall this journey, because I was so negligent overall, with respect to marketing. I was like, what? I'm just a B2B business. I don't have to worry about marketing. It's sales. I will hire a bunch of salespeople. They are going to bring business, and that's it. I'm going to be happy. But no. Pandemic changed everything.
Yeah, and the best part is you leaned in and you led by example. And that's the thing. There's fear. There's fear of putting yourself out there. How are people going to take me? And that's the biggest thing of leaning in digital marketing. Of course, myself, just like yourself, I started making content and videos, and people, it's like, oh, you travel over the world for supply chain and you visit all these many countries, like, of course, like India and Philippines, China. Like, why don't you take some video and show people what you do and what it really is? And I started kind of doing that late 2019 to early 2020, and then all of a sudden everything is shut. So I had a little bit of experience, but again, we have things of like how we are perceived by the other side. Like, I don't want to put myself on video. I don't believe in that. Marketing, I can just put a catalog. There's no reason I need to have a face. But now again, people do business with humans, business with humans.
Yep.
They don't do business with brand. And today, branding, digital or personal branding, which is synonymous with a company, is very big. And just like how you built your branding, Sam Gupta, everybody knows WS Rock Sam Gupta. And then you peel it back, say, oh, Sam Gupta is the principal consultant at ElevatIQ. He's a consultancy for ERP, and it goes in. So there is a brand recognition that has caused that. And I think the consumer side has created that branding to digital branding, and now it's come into the business. And the pandemic has forced businesses, really forced them to really to re-identify themselves of who are they and connect actually sales and marketing together, because sales and marketing were separate. Big corporations are completely, they don't even talk to each other.
Yep.
They should be too synonymous. They
Yep.
should be merged. And that was the biggest change. I think a lot of companies like, wow, we got to do this. And then the salesperson has to create their own brand with like with the company protocols, but they have to be a brand of themselves.
Yep.
Who are they? Who is Rob Tavi? Why do I want to do business with them? How do I find? And then the one number thing we do when any prospect comes, any business want to do, what do? The first thing people do now today is they go to google.com
Exactly.
and they put your name in. Who is this person?
Exactly.
If you don't have any DNA or information about yourself to build credibility, within 10 seconds, you can be disqualified. That changes that opportunity. And I love that story that you did, because you changed your trajectory of opportunity by using digital, leaning into it, putting yourself out there, getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Even though you have all the knowledge you have, but it's getting uncomfortable because you don't know how you're perceived or people comment or something. But of course, I bet you all the things you got, affirmation, a positive, everybody loved it, right? And everybody tries to mimic, like, I want to help, I want to coordinate, I love to come up, and I can see how has gotten with all your lives that you do. It's amazing. So well done. My hats off. I clap to you for that. I'd love to see some things like that.
Yeah, and you are doing amazing work as well. And just to build on that, Rob, I mean, if I approached you for this show before, my content or the presence over internet, probably you would not talk to me. You would not know who Sam Gupta is. But one of the things that this branding that you are doing for yourself, I'm doing for myself, it sort of creates that sense of trust between us. And it also, helps our customers. So let's say if I'm going to a customer, and now before this, okay, when I used to prospect them, I would have sales collateral. It was really dry, the sales verbiage, it was about product. But now what I do is I send my own podcast. I send my interviews. I send my press writing that I'm doing. I am being interviewed by a lot of media people now. That's because they know that, this person can talk. He is knowledgeable. I should probably interview him. So you establish yourself as the thought leader. And that's what I mean. See, if anybody is not doing there, then I would highly encourage every sales and marketing person to just come out and build that trust.
That's one thing, is the branding and video really builds visibility at scale, and it creates likeness at scale. And people not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody likes me. That's just what it is. But it builds it at scale, and that scale visibility creates likeness, to create credibility, to create opportunity. That opportunity is what you can turn into revenue. And the more opportunity you have, the more business you can do. And people don't understand that little thing, that little matrix. Like, that's just what it is, and myself, yes, we're a smaller business, but I try to lead by that digitalized. Of course, my salespeople everybody's hard to change their events. Like, I feel uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, it's putting in your reps. Any job you want to do, any sport you want to do, you have to put in the reps. You have to put it out there. And you have to keep practicing. The more you practice, the better you can shoot that ball in the hoop, the better you can record, the better you can be on camera, the better you can do everything. So, at the end of the day, it's just putting in the reps. I always say, just putting in the reps. And you are. And the thing is, your knowledge, you're spreading that knowledge, which is key. And I learned from you today a little bit. These are things that we learn from each other. And collaborate to spread awareness, to grow and give back and grow the ecosystem. That we are a fun industry to come into. Electronics, digitalizations, the ERP, the softwares, the semiconductors. And this is a very fun place for the new generation to come. But my last couple questions I have for you is really, what do you see going for the future, like critical event in the next, say, 5 years? What do you see is crucial for some companies to lean into and invest in, to be able to really empower and build infrastructure for the companies moving ahead?
So I am actually going to mention a couple of things overall from the customer experience perspective, and the way things have changed because of pandemic, and how the customer expectations are changing as well. And I am actually going to go back to one of the comments that you made. You know what? In case of B2C, you have to really care for the customer experience. In case of B2B, sure, you are just a distributor. You are selling to somebody, nobody cares. But if you look at the B2C right now, to be honest, okay, it's never just B2C. It's B2B to see
Yeah.
their fulfillment time, the fulfillment time that they are committing for their customers. You are part of that. For example, let's say if you are actually supplying to Amazon or Walmart, if they are committing that, hey, I am actually going to be supplying within 24 hours, they assume that you are going to be able to supply this in 6 hours. And by the way, you are B2B. So things like this, there are going to be a lot of trends like this, and you cannot meet the expectations of the consumers and the customers unless you have that connected infrastructure underneath. This is just one. Okay, we are going to see a lot more things overall from the customer experience perspective. In the retail world, in the traditional retail world, these scenarios are far more common, and that's why you see a lot more investment overall in the technology there. Because what happens there is, if you look at the fashion world, they buy online, pick up at the store. Now, these things are going to be in the electronics world as well. They are already happening. If I buy on Best Buy, then what I need to do is, hey, I cannot wait for the shipment to arrive in next 2 days. How can I just drive to my next Best Buy? Can I pick it? To be able to do that, what you need is the connectivity across all of your system to enable that customer experience. So we are going to see a lot more customer experience trends, and it's going to be buy online, pick up at store, buy online, pick up at I don't know, neighbor's house.
Well, it's kind of like a third-party fulfillment. Like that's how it is. You can buy. I mean, that's why Amazon has made a lot of people got into business. A third party, they can buy and sell. They don't have any inventory. There's no liability, and that pass through. I mean, if they do have, but you can be a marketplace. Amazon has created it for everybody. That B2C, that expectation is like, I have a platform. I can say, hey, Rob Tavi wants to sell a product. Oh, I can, and I have all the analytics. I can see this product sells a lot.
Yeah,
I could buy it at a low price and put 20% margin on it, put it on Amazon, and sell thousands of them, and just drop ship. And never have to really manage it. And it's made a lot of kids out there very savvy. They figured it out, and they're making lots of money doing it. But it's getting more and more competitive these days, no matter how you look at it. But it's fascinating how those systems, as you say, the experience, B2B, B2B2C, it's happening over and over. And yeah, I cannot agree more with you.
Yeah, and the other trends that I wanted to touch on is sometimes, when you look at the ERP system, CRM system, the only thing you are looking at is, what can it process my sales order? Can it close my invoice? If you are going to be looking from that perspective, all of the systems that were created in 1970s are probably going to be similar to what is available today. But the real difference between today's system versus yesterday's system is going to be that back-end AI that is actually enabling that experience, that is enabling it, reducing the number of clicks, that is reducing the learning time on the system, that is enabling that fulfillment again from 2 days to 2 hours. You don't see it. Okay, you need someone who understands these things. So either research a lot or just hire somebody who really understands these things and can help you meet your business goals.
Yep. Nailed it. I love it. And you're right, and everybody needs Sam Gupta's here is a consultant that can enlighten you of all these and get down into depth. I know you can go deep, and you can get deep into these, breaking them down, because that's the things we need more people like you and more people in the industry to be able to educate a lot of the leaders, future leaders, everybody come in to understand these systems work and to build structure, to build scale. We need all these to grow. You can't just do the mom and pop. You can't start a business in out of your garage, but you need to be able to scale, and you need to have these systems in place to be able to enhance the speed of experience and process and get to that experience. And again, at the end of the day, it's all about experience, in my opinion. It's customer experience, and having that 5-star, because everything's a rate. Everything is rated. So we all go into that. My final question is to you: what's your message to the new generation out there?
So my message to new generation is going to be, one of the things that I notice, especially in the younger community, is they sort of have this mindset that, you are old system, you are new system. Salesforce is so cool, or any other system out there. For example, the newer systems are so cool. They want to go after always the newest buzzwords or technology, but they don't want to understand what is happening in the old world and how these systems used to work. Again, I'm going to go back to my message. Everything has a place in this world. So understand its place first before rejecting it. Don't go after the buzzwords. Okay, that is the worst mistake you can do in adopting a technology or using a technology. So research what was the design psychology or the philosophy behind a system, because there's going to be the design psychology behind that. So make sure you pay attention to that and pay attention to details as opposed to simply rejecting it on the face.
And then I would say stay curious and figure out how everything works. That's it. Stay curious. Well, thank you, Sam. It's been enlightening. Thank you for coming on The Real Talk. It's been great discussing with you all these topics. I hope we can collaborate again, work together again in the future to come. And I wish you the best of success in the future.
I love your energy, Rob, and I loved being on our show. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you again. Thanks. Bye-bye.